Let's get to Eamon Javers on the latest efforts to pass a stimulus bill in the Senate. How late were people talking about this last night, Eamon? Do you know?
You know, they went until well after 8 p.m. last night. They said that they were going to reconvene about 9:30 this morning. And as Democrats and Republicans left the Capitol last night, they both said that they felt that they were close to a deal after having failed a couple of times to pass this measure on the Senate floor. Democrats were holding out for more constraints over the aid to companies. That what they want is more oversight over that money. They don't want it to be what they're calling a slush fund for Treasury Secretary Mnuchin or for President Trump to oversee that money without many restrictions. So that seems to be the last big sticking point. We'll see where they land today, but they are reconvening at 9 o'clock in terms of the negotiations and the conversations, and we'll see whether they can pass that by tonight. Meanwhile, yesterday we saw the president sort of in a remarkable 2-hour period of time in the White House press briefing room, really very visibly struggling with the tension here between the damage to the economy of this shutdown and the health implications of reopening the country. The president suggesting that the medical professionals may be too strict here in terms of wanting to shut the country down. Here's what he said.
If it were up to the doctors, they may say, let's keep it shut down. Let's shut down the entire world, because, again, you're up to almost 150 countries. So let's shut down the entire world. And when we shut it down, that would be wonderful. And let's keep it shut for a couple of years. You know, you can't do that. And you can't do that with a country, especially the #1 economy anywhere in the world, by far. #1 economy in the world. Can't do that. Because, well, it causes bigger problems than the original.
So the question here is, when will the president order the country to be reopened? The president not giving any indication yesterday. Of course, the 15th day of the 15-day suspension would be Monday. The president not committing to that. I texted with a senior administration official yesterday, guys. I asked if the president was going to reopen the country by the middle of April, and this senior administration official texted back, the president wants to do it sooner than that. So we'll see where that lands. And then, of course, the big unknown in all of this, guys, is going to be what happens if the president gives that go order to restart the economy. Of course, you know, the economy wasn't shut down by the president. It was shut down by individual governors, by individual business leaders. The whole thing began with the NBA really suspending its season. Will those individual businesses and political leaders follow the president's lead here, or will they make their own calculation and decision based on their health experts, their regional situation, even their liability that they might face if they reopen and somebody gets sick as a result? So all of those considerations, I think, will be very complicated, even if the president does get to a point where he says he wants the economy to get up and running again, guys.
Eamon, to that point, I was reporting yesterday, spoke to officials both in the state of New York and California, as well as the general counsels of two Fortune, we'll call them 10 companies, all of whom want to get the economy started, but are tremendously worried that if, in fact, the president does give the signal to go ahead, that, in fact, they will ultimately have to be the outliers and not do it. Those states, of course, California and New York, expected to be the most particularly hard hit. But then these general counsels making the point that if they were to bring their employees back, for example, and people were to get sick and or die, that the liability would be tremendous. And so I think there's going to be a huge question mark about how this actually takes place and how quickly it happens. Of course, if it looks like the curve is getting bent, I think everybody will get on board. But I think that it's going to. I think that's more than next Monday. I think from what I'm hearing from folks in New York and California, and at least these two folks, and I also spoke to the Chamber of Commerce yesterday. I think you're talking about 2 or 3 weeks from now before you're going to even get the sign from the numbers about which way things are going.
Right. And think about the politics of this, Andrew. If the president does say it's okay to reopen the country and reopen the economy, and governors and business leaders don't do it, you can imagine a frustrated President Trump will point to those figures and say, that's the reason the economy is tanking. It's not my fault. The reason the economy is tanking here is because those governors and business leaders aren't doing what I said. So politically, that might give the president sort of a scapegoat to point to going into re-election. He's was planning on running for re-election on the strongest economy in a generation or so, and he might end up having to run for re-election on the weakest economy or the worst economic wipeout since the Great Depression. So this is a looming concern for this White House: is how do they run for re-election in this environment? And having a scapegoat to point to and blame for that might be something that would be tactically, politically useful for them.